Jake Miller's hands were black with engine grease when the attorney walked into his shop. The man looked completely out of place on Station Epsilon 7, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Jake earned in a year. Most people who came to the lower decks wore patches on their patches. This guy looked like he'd never seen dirt in his life. "You're Jake Miller?" the attorney asked, holding a tablet like it might contaminate him. Jake wiped his hands on his already filthy coveralls. "Yeah. What did I do?" "Nothing. Your uncle passed away 3 weeks ago. You're his only living relative." Jake barely remembered Uncle Tom. The old man had been a freelance cartographer, always chasing maps and legends across the galaxy. They'd met maybe twice when Jake was a kid. "Okay. So what? He left me debts." The attorney's expression was weird. Almost nervous. "No. He left you something else. It's in Bay 12. The code is already transferred to your account." He handed Jake the tablet and practically ran back to the clean levels of the station. Jake stood there, confused. Bay 12 was one of the cargo storage areas. What could Uncle Tom possibly have stored there? He found out an hour later. The creature inside the cargo pod was the size of a small transport shuttle. Pure white scales covered its body, and massive wings were folded against its sides. It looked like the ancient Earth legends of dragons, except this thing was real and absolutely massive. Red eyes glared at him with what could only be described as pure hatred. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. The information packet explained it was called a Velkathos, an ancient alien species. Rare. Incredibly valuable. And apparently now his problem. There was a single message from Uncle Tom: "Keep him safe. Trust no one. He's the key to everything." That was it. No other explanation. Jake tried talking to it. The dragon just stared at him like he was an annoying insect. For 3 days, Jake came to the cargo bay with food. The creature ate everything, expensive protein slabs that ate through Jake's savings, but never said a word. Just radiated contempt from the corner of the pod. Jake moved him to his apartment on the 4th day. It was stupid, but keeping something this valuable in a cargo bay was asking for trouble. His apartment was barely big enough for himself, let alone a dragon the size of a cargo hauler. The creature squeezed into the corner and glared at everything. "Look, I don't know what my uncle was thinking," Jake said, "but we're stuck together. You got a name?" Silence. "Great. Real talkative. More silence. Fine. I'll call you Ash. You know, because you're white and look like you're made of ash." The dragon's eye twitched, but he said nothing. On the 6th day, everything went wrong. Jake was under a transport speeder, fixing a busted converter, when he noticed them. 3 figures moving through his shop, checking corners. They weren't customers. They moved like hunters. Like military. Their eyes scanned everything with the kind of focus that meant they were looking for something specific. Or someone. Jake's heart hammered. He quietly rolled out from under the speeder, grabbed his toolkit and slipped through the back door. His apartment was 3 levels up. If they tracked Ash here, he had maybe 5 minutes. He made it in 3. "We're leaving now," Jake said. Ash looked at him with those unblinking red eyes but didn't move. "I'm serious. There are people coming and I don't think they want to chat." Still nothing. Jake did what he did best, he improvised. His apartment was connected to the station's maintenance tunnels. He'd used them 100 times to scavenge parts. He triggered a false heat signature using a welding torch in the bathroom, rigged it to move on a timer. Then he pulled open the maintenance hatch. "Come on, big guy. Unless you want to meet whoever's hunting you." That got a reaction. Ash moved, squeezing his massive body through the hatch. Jake followed, sealing it behind them. The tunnels were tight. Jake knew them well, but navigating with a dragon the size of a transport was different. He could hear footsteps above them. Multiple sets. They were searching his apartment now. Jake led Ash deeper into the station's guts, through passages most people didn't know existed. He'd spent years exploring these tunnels, finding shortcuts and hidden spaces. Now that knowledge might save both their lives. They reached an old shipping container Jake had converted into storage. It was buried behind 3 other containers in a forgotten section of the cargo hold. He keyed it open. Now. Ash squeezed inside. Jake followed and sealed the door. They waited in silence. Jake's heart pounded so hard he thought it might give them away. He could hear the hunters searching, their footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. They were systematic. Professional. Getting closer. Then they were right outside. Jake held his breath. Through a crack in the container, he could see 3 figures with advanced scanners. Military-grade equipment. They swept the area once. Twice. One of them stopped right in front of their container. Jake's hand went to the plasma cutter in his belt. Not much of a weapon, but it was all he had. That's when Ash spoke for the first time. His voice sounded like metal grinding against stone. Your kind is stupidly brave. Fine. I'll tell you why they want me dead. The mercenaries moved past their hiding spot. Jake waited 10 full minutes after the footsteps faded before he let himself breathe normally. His shirt was soaked with sweat. Okay, Jake whispered. You want to tell me what that was about? Ash shifted in the cramped container. Those red eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. Your uncle discovered what I am. What I carry. Which is a map. Encoded in my genetic structure. In my bones themselves. Ash's voice carried centuries of exhaustion. The location of the architect's vault. Jake blinked. Everyone in the galaxy had heard rumors about the architects. An ancient civilization that disappeared millions of years ago. They'd supposedly left behind technology that made current galactic powers look like children playing with rocks. That's a myth. No, it's real. And every government, every crime syndicate, every power-hungry fool in the galaxy would kill for it. Ash looked away. Your uncle spent 5 years hiding me. He died keeping this secret. Jake's stomach dropped. Uncle Tom hadn't died in some random accident. He'd been murdered. So you're basically a walking treasure map. Correct. And those people are going to keep coming. Until one of us is dead. Yes. Jake sat back against the cold metal wall. His mind was already racing. This container would hide them for maybe a day. 2 if they were lucky. But Station Epsilon 7 was locked down tight. The Syndicate, that's who those mercenaries worked for, probably had every exit covered. They'd scan every ship leaving the station. Unless. I have an idea, Jake said. But you're not going to like it. 3 hours later, Jake was in Scrapyard Bay. This was where dead ships came to be picked apart. Vessels too damaged or old to repair, waiting to be broken down for parts. Most people saw junk. Jake saw possibility. The shuttle he'd found was ancient. Pre-war era, maybe 40 years old. The hull was cracked, the engine was shot, and the life support system was completely fried. It was scheduled to be scrapped in 2 days. Perfect. This is your plan? Ash had squeezed into the bay, staying in the shadows. This thing doesn't even have power. Not yet. Jake pulled out his toolkit. But it will. What Jake did over the next 2 days would have made any engineer at the big shipyard shake their heads. He pulled components from 6 different wrecks. A power core from a military frigate. Navigation computer from a racing yacht. Hull plating from a mining vessel. Life support from a luxury cruiser. Nothing matched. Nothing was designed to work together. Jake made it work anyway. He rewired systems that weren't meant to be compatible. He built adapters from spare parts and sheet metal. When he needed a coolant regulator and couldn't find one, he made it from a coffee maker and some copper tubing. It was ugly. It was definitely not regulation. But when he hit the ignition switch, the engines hummed to life. Ash watched the entire time. Your species does this often? Build functional machines from refuse. Only when we have to. Jake was elbow deep in the navigation system trying to get the coordinates to sync. Which is pretty much always. Other species would requisition proper parts. Wait for certified components. Follow protocols. Other species probably aren't being hunted by the biggest crime syndicate in the galaxy. Jake pulled himself out of the panel. Besides, proper parts cost money I don't have. By hour 48, the shuttle was ready. It wasn't pretty. The hull was 3 different colors where Jake had welded patches. The engines made a weird whistling sound. The whole thing shook when it powered up. But it would fly. Getting it past station security was the tricky part. Jake filed a flight plan as a scrap hauler, listed the shuttle as cargo being moved to a disposal facility. He even paid the handling fees. Everything looked legitimate on paper. They were halfway to the docking clamps when the Syndicate fleet arrived. 12 ships dropped out of jump space right outside the station. Heavy cruisers. Military grade. They transmitted a station-wide lockdown order. No ships in or out. Jake's window was closing fast. Strap in, he told Ash. This is going to get rough. He punched the engines before the docking clamps fully released. The shuttle lurched forward, alarms screaming. Station control was yelling at him to stop. The Syndicate ships were powering weapons. Jake aimed straight for the nearby asteroid field. Most pilots avoided the field. The asteroids were dense, moving fast, and unpredictable. Flying through them was suicide. Ship computers couldn't calculate safe paths fast enough. But Jake wasn't relying on computers. He threaded the shuttle between 2 massive asteroids, pulled a turn that slammed him against his restraints, and dove deeper into the field. The Syndicate ships followed. They were faster, better armed, and actually built for combat. But they couldn't keep up. Jake flew on instinct. He saw patterns in the chaos that computers couldn't process. When an asteroid tumbled toward them, he didn't calculate, he reacted. Pulled up, rolled left, dropped down. The G-forces were crushing. His vision narrowed. Blood vessels burst in his eyes. But he kept flying. Behind them, 2 Syndicate ships collided with asteroids. A third got caught between 2 rocks and was crushed. The others backed off, unable to match Jake's crazy flying. Ash's voice was strained. The forces should have killed you. Yeah. Jake's hands were locked on the controls. Humans are weirdly durable that way. They broke free of the field. Jake punched coordinates for the outer rim and jumped. As the stars stretched around them, Ash spoke quietly. Your species builds miracles from garbage. It's impressive. Jake managed a tired grin. Thanks. Now get some rest. Because they're not going to stop hunting us. Which means we need to find that vault before they find us. Agreed. The shuttle rattled and shook as it tore through jump space. Ugly, patched together, and held by hope and welding wire. But it was flying. And sometimes that was all that mattered. The colony world was called New Haven. Someone had a sense of humor because there was nothing safe about it anymore. The settlement had been abandoned 15 years ago after the expansion wars made the outer rim too dangerous. Now it was just empty buildings, broken equipment, and silence. Jake landed the shuttle near what used to be the main settlement. The buildings were still standing but covered in rust and vegetation. Windows were shattered. Doors hung off hinges. It looked like everyone had just walked away one day and never came back. Home sweet home, Jake muttered, popping the hatch. Ash climbed out, stretching his wings for the first time in days. This place is dead. Which makes it perfect. No one's going to look for us here. Jake grabbed his toolkit. Plus, abandoned colonies have lots of useful stuff. The first building they checked had been a medical center. Most of the equipment was ruined, but Jake found some intact circuit boards and a power cell that still held a charge. The next building was better, an old research lab. Someone had been studying local geology before the evacuation. Jake's eyes lit up when he saw the equipment. Oh, this is good. This is really good. It's broken, Ash observed. So's our shuttle. Doesn't mean it's useless. Jake was already pulling panels off a large machine. See, I need to read your genetic code. That requires a quantum scanner. Building one from scratch would normally take a fully equipped lab in about 6 months. And you plan to do it how? The human way. I'm going to cheat. Over the next week, Jake scavenged the entire settlement. He found a crashed cargo ship half buried in the forest. Its quantum drive was intact. A pre-war communications array gave him the processors he needed. The research lab had microscopy equipment. An old defense turret provided the focusing crystals. None of it was meant to work together. But Jake had spent his whole life making things work that shouldn't. He built the scanner frame from structural beams. Wired together processors using cables he made from stripped wire and solder. The focusing array was held together with brackets he hammered from sheet metal. When he needed a containment field generator and couldn't find one, he built it using parts from a refrigeration unit and some magnets. Ash watched him work. Every day the dragon seemed a little less hostile. A little more curious. Your species has been spacefaring for what, 200 years? Ash asked on the 3rd day. About that. Jake was calibrating a sensor array using a wrench and pure guesswork. The Velkathos had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years before your kind even discovered fire. Okay. We built ships that could cross galaxies. Cities that floated in space. Technology your scientists still couldn't understand. Jake looked up. And where are they now? Ash went quiet. I'm not trying to be mean, Jake said, going back to his work. I'm just saying fancy technology doesn't mean much if you're extinct. We're not extinct. Just nearly. What happened? Ash settled down, his massive form making the building creak. We grew proud. Believed ourselves superior to younger species. When the architects disappeared and left their vault behind, we fought over it. We, who had everything, wanted more. The wars lasted centuries. When they ended, billions of my kind were dead. The survivors scattered. That's rough. I watched it happen. Watched my species destroy itself over greed. Ash's voice carried an old pain. I've lived for 800 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. Civilizations destroy themselves the same way over and over. I lost faith in all of it. Jake connected another wire. Can't blame you. But you're kind? Ash paused. You're different. How so? You don't quit. Even when you should. Even when it's logical to surrender. Ash gestured at the scanner Jake was building. This shouldn't be possible. You lack the proper tools, the education, the time. Any reasonable being would accept defeat. Jake grinned. Good thing humans aren't reasonable. Indeed. By day 7 the scanner was ready. It looked like something a madman had built, all exposed wiring and mismatched components held together with hope and welding. But when Jake powered it up, it worked. Okay, big guy. I need a tissue sample. Ash extended a claw. Jake carefully scraped a small sample of scale. The material was incredibly dense, almost crystalline. He loaded it into the scanner. The machine hummed. Lights flickered. For a moment, Jake thought the whole thing would explode. Then the display lit up. Data streamed across the screen. Genetic code, but not like any Jake had seen. It was layered, multidimensional. Information encoded within information. Like a map folded into itself 1,000 times. This is insane, Jake whispered. Your DNA is basically a living computer. The architects built the encoding. Used Velkathos volunteers as carriers. We were honored at the time. Ash's voice was bitter. We didn't know it would make us targets for the next million years. Jake worked through the night, decoding layer after layer. The genetic map was incredibly complex, but there was a pattern. Coordinates, but not simple ones. They shifted based on gravitational fields, star positions, quantum fluctuations. Finally, as the sun rose on the 8th day, Jake found it. Got it? He pulled up a star map. The vault is in the frontier abyss. Ash's eyes widened. That's impossible. Why? The abyss is a gravitational dead zone. Space is folded in on itself. Ships that enter never come out. Every species in the galaxy avoids it. Jake looked at the coordinates, then at Ash. A slow grin spread across his face. Sounds fun. You can't be serious. Why would the architects put their vault somewhere easy to reach? Of course it's in the most dangerous place possible. Jake was already planning the route. We'll need to modify the shuttle's shields, recalibrate the engines, maybe build a... The building shook. Jake ran outside. In the sky, ships were dropping out of jump space. Dozens of them. The Syndicate fleet, massive and terrifying, filling the horizon. How did they find us? Jake asked. Does it matter? Ash's wings spread. They're here. And we're not ready. Jake looked at the fleet, then at his patched-together scanner, then at their barely functional shuttle. The smart move was to run. Hide somewhere else. Buy more time. But Jake was done running. Get to the shuttle, he said. If they want a fight, let's give them one. Jake knew the odds before he even started the engines. His ship was barely holding together with patches and prayers, while out there waited an entire fleet of warships, sleek, deadly, and built for one purpose, to kill anything that got close. Any sane person would have turned around. Any smart person would have surrendered. But Jake wasn't feeling particularly sane or smart that day. This is insane, he muttered, gripping the controls so hard his knuckles turned white. Agreed, Ash said calmly. The statistical probability of survival is 0.003%. You're really bad at pep talks, you know that? But Jake didn't wait for a response. He punched the throttle and dove straight toward the enemy fleet. The aliens probably thought he was just another desperate fool making a final stand. They had no idea what was coming. See, here's the thing about humans, we don't fight like everyone else in the galaxy. Other species have battle strategies, tactical manuals, thousands of years of refined combat doctrine. Humans? We make it up as we go along. We do things that make absolutely no sense on paper but somehow work in the moment. Jake saw the massive gravity wells nearby, the kind that would normally be avoided at all costs. To the alien pilots, those were hazards to stay away from. To Jake, they were weapons. He flew straight between two warships, then cut his engines at the last possible second. The momentum carried him forward while the ships behind him couldn't adjust fast enough. They tried to follow his trajectory but got caught in each other's gravitational pull. The result was spectacular. Two enemy warships crashing into each other in a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. That shouldn't have worked, Ash observed. Welcome to human logic, Jake grinned, already lining up his next impossible move. He dove, twisted, rolled the ship in ways that made the old hull groan in protest. He used the gravity wells like a pinball machine, slingshotting around them at speeds that should have torn his ship apart. The alien pilots tried to follow, but they flew by the book. They calculated safe distances, proper approach vectors, acceptable risk levels. Jake threw the book out the airlock years ago. He timed his jumps with split-second precision, appearing right where the enemy least expected. He flew through debris fields that would have destroyed a larger ship. He even skimmed so close to one warship's hull that he scraped off their communication array, not because he meant to but because that's how close his margins were. The aliens were probably losing their minds trying to predict his next move. The problem was Jake didn't know his next move until he was already doing it. Can't predict chaos. But then things got really interesting. Ash, who'd been mostly quiet this whole time, suddenly lit up like a miniature star. Energy shields erupted from his small form, protecting their ship from incoming fire. Plasma blasts shot out, precise and devastating, taking out weapon systems on enemy ships. Ash? Jake shouted over the sound of explosions. What the hell is that? Abilities I've kept hidden, Ash replied simply as another blast of energy tore through an enemy fighter. For centuries I've concealed what I'm truly capable of. Well, this would have been useful information earlier. You never asked. Together they were unstoppable. Jake's crazy flying combined with Ash's hidden powers carved a path of destruction through the blockade. Ships exploded, fled, or crashed into each other trying to catch them. The fleet that was supposed to be their death sentence became a confused mess of burning metal and panicked communications. And then they reached it, the abyss itself. Calling it a storm doesn't do it justice. Imagine the worst hurricane you've ever heard of, multiply it by 1,000, set it in space, and add gravitational forces that could crush a moon into dust. That's what they flew into. The ship immediately started screaming. Alarms blared from every system. The hull groaned like a wounded animal. The gravitational storms grabbed them and tried to tear them apart piece by piece. Computers dead, Jake announced as his navigation system sparked and died. Guess we're doing this old school. He flew by instinct and math, the kind of math you don't learn in school but pick up after years of flying through places you shouldn't. His brain processed trajectories faster than the ship's computer ever could, seeing patterns in the chaos that no machine would recognize. The abyss was like a living thing trying to kill them with every twist and turn. Gravitational whirlpools appeared out of nowhere. Space itself seemed to bend and fold in ways that hurt to look at. One wrong move and they'd be crushed into atoms. No species would attempt this, Ash said, his voice barely audible over the sound of their ship falling apart around them. They would calculate the odds, see the impossibility, and retreat. It's the logical choice. Jake laughed, actually laughed, as he manually adjusted their trajectory by pure feel. Good thing humans are terrible at logic. He pulled maneuvers that physics shouldn't have allowed. He found pockets of calm in the storm that sensors said didn't exist. He threaded the needle through gravitational fields so narrow that their hull scraped against forces that should have pulverized them. And somehow, impossibly, they made it through. The vault appeared ahead of them, a pocket of perfectly calm space hidden in the heart of the abyss. It was beautiful in a way that made Jake's chest tight. After all the chaos, all the violence, here was peace. But as they approached, Ash's energy dimmed. His voice, when he spoke, carried a weight Jake had never heard before. Jake, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you from the beginning. Is this the part where you reveal you're actually evil or something? Jake tried to joke, but his voice fell flat. The vault doesn't contain weapons, Ash said quietly. It never did. Jake's heart sank. Then what? It contains a warning. A message left behind by an ancient civilization that destroyed itself. And the key to open it, to access what's inside, requires something that only exists in one species in this entire galaxy. Jake already knew the answer, but he asked anyway. Let me guess, humans? Yes. Something in human consciousness, in the way your minds work, in your fundamental nature. You're the only ones who can unlock it. That's why I needed you. That's why I've been protecting you. And that's why everyone else wants you dead. The ship drifted in the calm space and Jake stared at the vault ahead of them. After everything they'd been through, they'd finally made it. But the truth was somehow heavier than any weapon could have been. Whatever was in that vault, whatever warning it contained, was meant specifically for humans to find. And Jake had a sinking feeling that once they opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. Well, he finally said, we've come this far. Might as well see what all the fuss is about. The vault floated before them like a massive tomb carved from metal that shouldn't exist. It was ancient, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. The surface was covered in symbols that hurt to look at too long, patterns that seemed to shift and change when you weren't paying attention. The architects, Ash said quietly, his voice carrying a sadness Jake had never heard before. They were brilliant. More advanced than anything that exists today. They mapped the stars when most species were still crawling in mud. What happened to them? Jake asked, though part of him already knew the answer wouldn't be good. They destroyed themselves. Ash moved closer to the vault, his energy dimming with what looked like grief. Not through war, not through disease. Through greed. They had everything, technology that could reshape worlds, knowledge that could cure any problem. But it wasn't enough. They wanted more. Always more. They tore themselves apart fighting over resources they didn't even need. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. And they left this place as what? A warning? A test, Ash corrected. They built this vault hoping that someday someone would be different. That a species would come along that could learn from their mistakes instead of repeating them. They approached the entrance together. Up close, Jake could see the genetic lock, a complex mechanism that pulsed with faint light. It wasn't like any lock he'd ever seen. This wasn't about keys or codes. This was about biology, about the very essence of who and what you were. The lock requires two components, Ash explained. First, Velkathos DNA, my people's genetic signature. We were the architect's closest allies, the ones they trusted with the location of this place. And the second part? Ash turned to look at him, and in those ancient eyes, Jake saw something that made his stomach drop. A specific human neural pattern. Not just any human, it has to be someone whose brain operates in a very particular way. Someone who can feel empathy even for their enemies. Someone who can solve impossible problems not through logic alone but through creativity born from desperation. Someone who refuses to give up even when every rational calculation says they should. Jake's mouth went dry. You're saying I'm the other half of the key? That's why you needed me specifically? The vault scanned billions of minds across the galaxy. Yours was one of 3 that matched the pattern. The others were already dead before I could reach them. Ash's voice was gentle now. Jake, your species is young. Raw. Chaotic. But your minds work in ways that no other species can replicate. You feel deeply even when it hurts you. You create solutions that break every rule. You hope when hope is illogical. So all of this, the job, the hunts, everything, it was always about getting me here? Yes. And I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. But the vault's location had to remain secret. Too many would kill for what they think is inside. Jake stared at the lock, his mind racing. Everything he'd been through, every near-death experience, every impossible choice, it all led here. To this moment. To him being the key to something he didn't fully understand. What's actually inside? He asked. Knowledge. Real knowledge. The kind that could advance any civilization by thousands of years. Medical technology. Energy solutions. The secrets of peaceful coexistence between different species. Everything the architects learned before they fell. That sounds too good to be true. It is, Ash said grimly. Because the vault will only share its secrets with those who prove they've learned the lesson. Cooperation over conquest. Understanding over exploitation. The architects made sure that anyone who opened this vault seeking weapons or power would find nothing. Only those who come seeking knowledge for the right reasons can access what's inside. Jake looked at his hand, then at Ash. So what happens now? Now we open it. Together. And we find out if your species, if you, have what it takes to inherit what the architects left behind. They placed their hands on the lock simultaneously. Jake felt a strange tingling sensation as the mechanism scanned him, not just his DNA but his thoughts, his memories, his very essence. It was invasive and intimate and terrifying all at once. The lock opened with a sound like music. Inside the vault was beautiful. Crystalline structures that held compressed data, holographic displays that showed star systems and formulas and concepts Jake couldn't begin to understand. It was overwhelming. It was magnificent. But they didn't have long to appreciate it. Alarms blared. Ash's head snapped up. They found us. The Syndicate. They brought everything they have. Through the viewport, Jake saw them arriving, hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. The entire Syndicate fleet coming for the vault. Coming for the knowledge. Coming to take what they believed was rightfully theirs. We can't fight that many, Jake said, his tactical mind already running the numbers and finding nothing but zeros. No, Ash agreed. We can't. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation crushing down on them. They'd come so far. Survived so much. And now, at the moment of their greatest discovery, it was about to be stolen by those who would use it for all the wrong reasons. Jake looked at the knowledge around him. He looked at Ash. He looked at the fleet approaching outside. And then he made the most human choice possible, the idealistic one. The one that made no tactical sense. The one that logic said would fail. Broadcast it, he said suddenly. What? All of it. The vault's message. The warning. Everything. Send it out on every frequency to every corner of the galaxy. Let everyone see what we found. Let them all know the truth. Jake, if we do that, then nobody owns it, Jake interrupted. Not the syndicate. Not us. Everyone gets to learn the lesson. Everyone gets to make the choice of what to do with this knowledge. Isn't that what the architects wanted? For people to choose cooperation instead of having it forced on them? Ash stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, something that might have been a smile crossed his ancient face. Your species is either incredibly wise or incredibly foolish. I haven't decided which. Why not both? Working together, they activated the Vault's transmission system. Jake's voice went out across the entire galaxy, carried on waves that would reach every inhabited system, every space station, every ship. My name is Jake. I'm a mechanic from Earth and I'm standing in the Architect's Vault. For centuries people have killed for what's in here. Died for it. Started wars over rumors of it. But here's the truth, the real treasure isn't in taking. It's in understanding. The architects left this place as a warning and a gift. They destroyed themselves through greed, and they're begging us not to make the same mistake. This knowledge belongs to everyone or it belongs to no one. The choice is yours. He broadcast everything, the warning, the data, the story of the architect's fall. He laid it all bare for billions to see. The syndicate fleet slowed. Stopped. Jake could imagine the chaos aboard those ships, commanders receiving orders to attack while their crews watched the broadcast. Seeing the truth. Seeing a lone human mechanic and an ancient dragon standing together, offering freely what the syndicate wanted to take by force. One by one the ships began to power down their weapons. The galaxy was watching. Billions of eyes on this moment. And faced with that kind of scrutiny, with the weight of their own people questioning their greed, the syndicate backed down. It wasn't a complete victory, Jake knew that. Some would still try to take the vault by force later. Some would use the knowledge for evil. But for now, in this moment, cooperation had won over conquest. Ash looked at him with something that might have been pride. Your species will either save this galaxy or destroy it. Either way, it won't be boring. Jake laughed, the tension finally breaking. That's the most human compliment I've ever heard. They left the vault together, broadcasting its location so anyone could visit, anyone could learn. A poor mechanic from Earth and an ancient dragon who'd been grumpy for centuries, proving that humanity's real strength wasn't technology or weapons or even our stubborn refusal to quit. It was our ability to build bridges across impossible differences. To choose hope over cynicism. To believe that understanding could triumph over force. As their patched-together ship limped away from the abyss, Jake looked back one last time at the vault. The architects had failed their test. But maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy could pass it. And it all started because one human refused to give up and one dragon decided to trust him. The end. Retry.